Oh, let's go to Rabbi Bach and let's see how he learns man. So again, to our members that are here tonight, I want to be very clear. If somebody asks you now, what is the meaning of the word man? First interpretation is, it is an unknown item. When you don't have a name, so you know what to call it, it's mahu. What is it? So it's really manhu. When you say, okay, man for sure. Man is unknown item, unknown substance. Mahu. Says the Bible. No, that's not what it is. What the man is, as I said, it's better than Uber Eats, because Uber Eats you have to pay for. However, this is a gift. There's no bill. And the tradition is that there's no waste either. There is some sort of tradition, maybe this is where they got it from, that since the man there was no waste, and it seems there was no weight gain either by the man. So maybe that's where they got that statement that says that whatever you eat on Shabbat, you won't gain weight. All I have to say to that claim is just look at the guy that said it, and you'll know if it's true or not. Anyway, the point over here is, it was a gift. It's a gift from God. How do you say the word gift in Hebrew? Matana. And therefore the shoresh of the word matana is what? Man. And therefore man is a form of a mana, a matana. And therefore they said, listen, we don't know what to call it. So do you know what we're going to call it? We're going to call it man, the gift of God. I read you the Benubah. מנו מלשון מנה אחת אפיים בשמואל, וכן למשה היה למנה, ועל כן נותן הכתוב טעם, כי לא ידעו מהו, they didn't know what it is. כלומר, מפני שלא ידעו מהו, כראו מתנה מן השמיים. They called it, it's a gift from heaven, but they didn't call it a specific name yet because they didn't know what it was. They didn't know its property. They never engaged it yet. So they just said, listen, it's got to be something good. It's a matana. And how do you call matana min hashamayim? They call it man. Some say that the man having all these miraculous properties to it, so therefore it's miraculous food. And therefore they called it man. Man is Rashetevot, Ma'aseh Nisim, is miraculous food, but Ma'achal Nisim. That's Rashetevot. But Rabotai, we must go to the most basic of the commentators, and that's Rashi. How does Rashi learn the word man? He does not learn like his grandson, that man is mahu. What is it? We don't have it. What is this guy? Who is this guy? He doesn't learn like the Rabbeinu Bachya that says matana. He doesn't learn ma'aseh nisim. So how does he understand it? So he says the following. Manu Hachanat Mazon. Hachanat Mazon means prepared nourishment. So he learns man is nourishment and it's prepared. And how does he know that man is nourishment? Because if you open up the Navi, Daniel, when Daniel the prophet worked for the king, so the king had to supply him food. So the pasuk says, "Vayman lahem hamelech." Vayman lahem hamelech means he supplied for him his man. What is his man? His prepared food. So therefore, man, according to Rashi, is the prepared nourishment. Very, very simple, which is the way we could understand it. Now, the reason why he says Hachanat Mazon It's because the man is different than regular food. It does not need preparation. It's already pre-prepared. It's ready to eat, as is. Whereas, there is a great rabbi, and he is called the Yismach Moshe. Yismach Moshe says that in order to make bread, just take a simple food like bread, there are 13 different processes that one must go through in order to go from wheat to baked bread. He bases this on a Gemara in Shabbat, page 73. Now, even though if you look at that Gemara, it sounds like there's 11 processes. However, the footnote on the bottom explains how it's really 13 because they would plow twice, they would plow before they put the seed in the ground, they would plow a second time, and they would light a fire, extinguish a fire. Basically, there's 13 different melachot that have to be done in order to prepare food. 13. He says that's why we call food mazon, like the kata mazon, because mazon is made up of two words. The mem and the nun of mazon is man, that's food, but it's not pre-prepared. The middle letters of mazon is zayin vav, which equals 13. That means for regular food, you need 13 preparatory processes in order for it to become an edible. That's called mazon. So you know what man is? Man is minus the 13. You don't need the 13 processes. Therefore, it's mazon minus the zayin and the vav, he says. And therefore, it's ready to go. It's very nice. But then the Torah continues. So we have another interpretation of man. That's Shitat Rashi. Torah then tells us, towards the end of Parashat Haman, Vayi Bayom Shlishi, it was the sixth day of Sarai Shishi, Laktu Nechem Mishner, double portion, Shabbat. And they come to Moshe and they say, hey, what is this? It seems Moshe didn't tell them. He wanted them to be surprised. He didn't tell them on Sunday, get ready for the double portion of Friday. All of a sudden, this Se'im comes to Moshe and say, what's this news? It's unbelievable. We got a double portion. Buy one, get one. You get that an Uber Eats once in a while also. So the Pasuk says, and I quote Chapter, and this is an unbelievable Pasuk. You could miss it. It's in Parashat Haman. Moshe Rabbeinu story. Re'u, כי אדוני נתן לכם השבת. רבותיי, השם gave you the שבת. על כן הוא נותן לכם ביום שישי בין יומיים. That's why he's giving you double portion on Friday. Look, you have the Shabbat. And I ask a simple question. Anytime you see the word re'u or re'eh, it means there's something new. That means the Torah saying, re'eh, surprise, look at this. And what's the surprise? Hashem natan lekem Shabbat. And if I was there, I would tell Moshe, that's no surprise. We're in chapter 16. You gave us already the Shabbat in Mana. That's not a surprise at all. Re'u ki Hashem natan lekem Shabbat. Shabbat was given already in Mana. This is the question of the Brisker Rav. It's brought down in the Haggadah Shel Pesach of the Bet HaLevi. How could there be a new introduction of Shabbat after the man when the Shabbat was given? Pre-man. So he says, in typical Brisker fashion, there's two elements of the Shabbat. One element was delivered pre-man, and then a new element, which is the key element of the Shabbat, we didn't get until post-man. What are the two elements? He says like this. There's the law, and then there's the attitude. There's a difference. In Marah, we got Chok Mishpat. We got the laws. They gave us Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Torah, and Gimel and Dalet. There it is. Go learn it. All the simanim of Shabbat, what you can't do and what you're not allowed to do and what's forbidden, all the nitty-gritty of all the details of the laws. That's Chokum Mishpat. However, after the man, God presented the Shabbat in the way we should view it. Because if you're just in Marah, the Shabbat is like a dead weight on your head. In Marah, the Shabbat is incarceration. I mean, for 25 hours, you can't pick up your phone, you can't turn on the microwave, you can't carry a pistachio nut 4 feet in the public. You can't do anything. You're homebound. That's the Shabbat in Marah. Chok Mishpat, the laws. If Shabbat ends in Marah, it is Marah. It's a Shabbat of Marah. It's a bitter Shabbat. And therefore God now wants to introduce to us how we should feel during these 25 hours of the Shabbat and what exactly it is. Now I've experienced in my life people that clearly only had the Shabbat of Marah. They never experienced the post Shabbat that I'm going to reveal to you today. You want to know an example of Shabbat of Marah? We were young, used to pray across the street in Shari Sion, and they would end the Shabbat, different minyanim. One of the minyanim would end exactly on the dot. God forbid you should end the Shabbat a couple of minutes after the time. So you would get the attitude as if they couldn't wait for it to be over. Something that is unpleasant, you cannot wait until it's over. And the second the Havdalah was said, the Mavdil B'Kodesh Tehor, there were certain men that would run into the hallway and right away grab a cigarette. And the pleasure that they had at that moment, you could see, was clearly they were more happy that it was over. Now, that's the Shabbat of Marah. It's laws, and it's restrictive, and your hands are tied, and you really can't do it. So once they let you out of jail, like we need my $1, so we got. So that Shabbat, you're happy that it's over. Well, the Gemara says on this pasuk, Re'u ki Hashem natan lachem et Shabbat. God gave you the Shabbat. He's a natan. What is a natan? A natan comes from the word matana. And the Gemara says, matana achat yeshli bebet genazai. I have a present to give you. Present? What is one who sees a present? So the Jewish people say, matana, we're ready. What's the matana? Shabbat Shema. Shabbat is a matana. Now that was a Hiddush. Because until now, says the Brisker Rav, they got the Shabbat and Marah. That's the laws. That's the halachot, isur, mutar, sikila, korban hatat, all the different restrictions of the Shabbat. All of a sudden, after the man is given, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Re'u, ki Hashem natan lachem et Shabbat. You have to know that it is a gift. And that's very important that you have that attitude that it is a gift. And you'll see why it's important you should have that attitude. You might say to yourself, what's the difference? If I keep the Shabbat and all its laws, what do I care if I do it with a smile on my face or a puss on my face? I got the Shabbat. Who says I have to enjoy it? The Pasuk says, if Hashem is giving you a gift, so therefore you run away from the gift. I remember my grandfather on the show, Joe Saptek on the show. I used to be with him in Deal in the summers. The Shabbat wasn't until 7 o'clock soon. Already he was dressed at 4 o'clock, 3 hours before, ready in his suit. He would go down, the Erev Shabbat, prepare all the air conditioning, the lights. Then he would sit down and have a coffee with my grandmother and apple pie, and he was in the bed till an hour before they started. He couldn't wait till it started. He couldn't wait till it started. This is a matana. When you know God's about to give you a matana, you come early, you come to be excited. You don't let the Shabbat bring you in, you bring in the Shabbat. It's a different attitude. We saw it in the Sunday Key. Oh. If that's the case, we now can understand why this attitude is so important. Based on a famous statement, and Moshe Feinstein wrote it in his Sefer Darash Moshe. I love the show. Moshe noticed a phenomenon. He noticed how Jews came from the old countries in Europe. They came to America, and it wasn't easy to make a living. They also had to make man. But the man wasn't Panasa coming from the Shamayim. Their man had to be earned the old-fashioned, had to go to work. That was their man, they had to make a living. And in those days in America, if you didn't work on Shabbat, they fired you. There's no such thing taking off on Shabbat. There was no equal rights and all these different organizations that stand up for the rights of religious Jews and Orthodox Jews. It didn't exist. Either you come to work on Shabbat or you don't come to work at all. You were fired. And many religious Orthodox Jews, they withstood the test and they would go from one job every week. Start a new job, when Shabbat came, the boss would say, you're coming in tomorrow, I can't work more than you, don't come in next week. And there goes his Panasah. So every Shabbat, the Moshe says, they would come home and they would tell their children, listen, we're Jews, and this is what we have to do, and Daddy lost his job, and this is the sacrifice that we have to make for Hashem, and therefore we do it. And the father showed a little anguish, a little sadness in the fact, but nonetheless the son saw the sacrifice of the father. And you would think it's a good thing. But Moshe said that had a negative effect on the children, because the children saw that the Shabbat was an inconvenience for the father. It was a burden. It wasn't something easy. It was something that was a terrible day, because Shabbat meant his father lost his job, and the father would come home all dejected and depressed, but he would keep the Shabbat. So the son and the children, when they got older, they said, we're not interested in this Shabbat. You see, the fathers kept Shabbat of Marah, but they didn't give the feeling that it's a matana. Not like Mr. Esha, that was viewed in one of the films that they showed about the community, a member of our community, and he was also freed from his work because he didn't come on Shabbat. He comes on Friday afternoon, all his family, and he says, I have good news to tell you. He says, Baruch, he says, because of the Shabbat, they told me that I shouldn't come to, it doesn't matter, the Shabbat is a matana. I wouldn't give up anything before against the Shabbat. The Shabbat is the most important. And he showed his children how much he was happy. And he took out wine and whiskey and he made it a hayim. And he said, the hayim was this zechut that we have the matana. Parnasah, whatever give us the parnasah. Parnasah comes from Hashem. All his children, Baruch Hashem, Shabbat. So the attitude that we have on Shabbat comes. The children are watching. The parents enjoy it. It's either Shabbat of Bara or Shabbat of Re'u Hashem Natan Lachem Shabbat. Matana Tova B'Bitkin Alai. And if it's a matana, you come early, you stay late. If it's a matana, you enjoy it. It's not considered a sacrifice. You can't wait till Shabbat comes. You don't sit there and say, oh, I wish I could play with my phone. I don't have my phone with me. I wish I could have 2 days without my phone. The Shabbat is exceptional. These are attitudes that we must convey to our children. Oh, now I understand the connection between Man and Shabbat. Because Man represents the Parnasah. Now in the olden days, the Parnasah was quite easy. It came out. But Today we have man as well. And that's why we still eat 2 breads every Shabbat. Because the breads that we eat is reminding us that the Jewish people, you have to make a parnasah. But you also have to remember that the parnasah comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you shouldn't become too devoted into thinking that it's you. The parnasah is all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Can anybody think when the man came down that it was them? Can any Jew take credit and say, look what I did? Of course not. And then we're just like the man is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have to have faith that even the parnasah that we make with our hands, that we go out, all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When I was asked to speak in the yeshiva, we had a career day. They told me to speak, to talk about finding careers for the children, for the kids in high school. So I said to them one thing. I said, when you choose a career in life, do not base your career choice on money. That is the worst way to choose a career, because you might choose something that you don't like, and you'll be stuck with doing something you don't like your whole life, and you might not even make money, because it's not the career that makes the money. So they said, then Rabbi, what should we base it on? Do something you love. Parnasah will come either way, but at least you're happy. I chose to be a teacher. I love being a teacher. I didn't decide what's the best income. I know doctors that are wealthy, and I know doctors that are poor. I know lawyers that are rich, and doctors that are lawyers that are... It doesn't do with the career. You have to choose something that you enjoy. And then you have to put your faith in God. And if you have faith in God, you won't cheat, you won't steal, you won't cut corners. And when it comes to Shabbat, it'll be very easy to keep the Shabbat. You won't shut the store or shut the order. Oh, I have to close the doors. Could a gift from God bring you a loss? If God gives you a gift, does it come with a bill? You think God's going to give you a gift, and all of a sudden there's a snag, and all of a sudden there's a hidden hook, that all of a sudden you get trapped and having to pay hidden charges? Of course not. If God says it's a matana tova, you have nothing to worry. But that takes faith. And you know where we learned faith from? From the man. Every day when it came down, we trusted God. But you know what strengthened our faith? The Shabbat. Parnasah is the man, and the Shabbat strengthens our belief. Hashem created the world, Hashem guides the world, Hashem gives us everything. And Rabbi Baruch used to tell us about a retailer by the name of Mr. Craig, that had stores on Fifth Avenue, and he used to close his stores on Shabbat, which was the biggest day. And then he would go to work on Sunday, and he would come to Rabbi Baruch and say, I made double today, Rabbi. He had emunah, belief that by keeping the Shabbat, you're not going to lose. You're only going to make. And therefore, my opinion is, and then I saw it in the Bata'ayin that brings it. Man, according to the Rashbam, Mahu. What is this? It's the UFO. Man, according to the Birbahya, Matana. It's a gift from God. Man, according to the Shi, is what? Prepared food. Hakanat Mazor. Maaseh Nisim. But according to the way I understand the word man, the shoresh of man comes from the word emunah. Emunah is belief and faith. And then the man is an exercise of it. And when you're making parnasah, you have to have emunah. And you know it strengthens the emunah, the Shabbat. The person is able to close his business, and he sits down and he's happy. And because he knows it's a matana, and he knows all the blessings of the week come from the Shabbat. And that's what Rabbi Akiva said. Idu natananu et haman velo natananu the Shabbat. What Shabbat? The Shabbat after the man. The Shabbat before that we're not talking about. That's a miserable Shabbat. That's the Shabbat of laws. That's the Shabbat of when we can get out of here, get out of jail. He's referring to the Shabbat after the man. The Matana Tovah Shabbat. That's why it says, Velo Natan Lanu et Shabbat. And he didn't give us the Shabbat, meaning from this pasuk over here. That it would have been enough. But you know what Hashem did? Hashem said, I want to strengthen your belief in me. And I want to strengthen your imunah. Therefore, the man is bolstered by Shabbat. Therefore, even though you're working 6 days a week, whatever gave us is exercise to stop everything. To recognize that all the berachah comes from God. And that's why in Parashat Bereshit, when the pasuk says, Vaybarech oto, vaykadesh oto, so that she says, he blessed the Shabbat. Vaybarech oto, b'may bebarecho, b'man. You see that there's a direct connection between the Shabbat and the man. It is the Shabbat that trains a person to put his faith in God. That it's not you. When everybody else is running and doing, we take a day off, we take 52 days off a year, which according to the economists, it should affect the bottom line. But we have great faith, and we don't do it with a marah face. Do it with a happy face. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva says, how great is God? Not only did he give us the man, he gave us parnasah, but he gave us the exercise called Shabbat, in order to preserve the parnasah. That we shouldn't think that it's going that it's our own blessings. And therefore, according to the Brisker, the Shabbat that's mentioned in that Kadash of Pesach is not the Shabbat. Prima is the Shabbat, and they're not the same. And therefore, the attitude of the Shabbat is the key. Once you have an attitude of it's a matana, you know that there's nothing bad to come out of it. And when the Kubanim say that's why we have the 2 loaves 3 times. Friday night 2 loaves, Shabbat morning 2 loaves, and Seudat Shlishi. The 6th loaf, says the Kabbalists, correspond to 6 days of the coming week. Therefore, the 2 loaves on Friday night correspond to Berachah the next coming Sunday and Monday. And then the 2 loaves on Shabbat morning is Tuesday and Wednesday. And the Seudat Shlishi is Thursday and Friday. So on Shabbat, we say, by not working, and by spending the time doing the mitzvot and in synagogue, etc., with our families, that brings the Berachah for the... This is Emunah. Therefore, the Shabbat of Parashat Beshalach is the key Shabbat. It's the Shabbat which is not only Shabbat of laws. Of course, Shabbat is made up of laws. I'm not denying that. But then once you have the laws, the way we receive it, Atana Torah Yesh Devet Kenazai, the Shabbat Shema. Therefore, God tells Moshe, go tell them about this gift, that they should know it, because they might not realize how great it is. Shabbat is basically a lesson in Emunah. And from the Emunah to Shabbat, we go out and make the man. We have to collect it. The rest of the days of the week, we recognize that even if it's difficult, that even if we're having a hard time, and if there's a hiccup, the Lord will take care of it. And who's responsible for giving the name now? Who gave the name? Well, if you look at the Pasuk says, and I quote, here it is. The Pasuk 31. Vayikri'u Bet Israel et Shemo Man. Says Rav Samson, Rav Hirsch, Bet Israel. Bet Israel usually refers to the ladies. It should have said Bnei Israel, so that the ladies are going to get the credit for coming up with man. So I saw incidentally from the Hiddush, an amazing Hiddush. He says from here we see that they named the man on Shabbat. Because the Pasuk says, Re'u ki Hashem natan lachem et ha-Shabbat, v'yishmetu ha'am b'yom ha'shvi'i, v'yikri'u bet v'set shemo man. So from here you see that Shabbat is a time for naming things. Here's where we get the minhag to name a baby girl on Shabbat. Because we see they named the man, but there's a connection between naming things on Shabbat. A baby boy has to name Milah. But says Rav Samson from Hirsch, why the ladies? He says, that's the job of a Jewish lady. The Jewish lady is to give her husband encouragement in Emunah. The husband struggles, and the husband comes home and he says, oh, what are we going even make parnasa, and they fired me, and I lost my truck, and I lost my warehouse, and they canceled the order, and we have and all the different problems, and the price of tuition went up, and the price of food went up, and we have to rent the house, and we have to pay for care, and all the bills are what are we going to do? How are we going to survive? And the job of Bet Yisrael, Vayikru Bet Yisrael Shemo, Man Melashon Emunah. What's the difference between the food coming down from the heavens or what you're doing? Oh God, nothing changed. It's just that, well, because you think you're more active, nothing to do with it. It's all Hashem provided the Jewish people for 40 years, and then it's the job of the Jewish woman to behazek b'schut nashim tzadkaniyot nigalu b'mitzrayim. It's the Jewish woman that had the blind faith, and even until today, we're reminded that it was the ladies that coined it, the bread of emunah, the bread of faith, and it's their job in order to inculcate that not only to their husbands but to their wives, and that happens by Yom HaShivi'i. By Yom HaShivi'i, with the attitude of Matana Tovah, the Bet Kenazai.